Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you with us for our first webinar in our Small Flock Poultry Fundamentals for Veterinary and Extension Professionals series. This series was developed to provide practical, research-based information for professionals who work with small flock poultry owners. Throughout the series, we'll cover topics ranging from understanding the small flock poultry landscape and flock management to disease recognition, biosecurity, and effective client education. Today's session, Understanding the Small Flock Poultry Landscape, will provide the foundation for everything that follows. We'll discuss who today's small flock owners are, why backyard and small-scale poultry production has grown so rapidly, the unique challenges these flocks present, and the important role that veterinary and extension professionals play in supporting this diverse audience. Before we get started, just a quick housekeeping note. In the interest of time, we'll hold questions and discussion until the end of the presentation. However, please feel free to enter your questions in the chat as they come up so you don't forget them. We'll make time at the end of the webinar to address as many questions as possible. Whether you're joining us live or watching the recording later, thank you for being here. We hope this series provides practical tools and resources that you can apply in your work and help build your capacity to support small flock poultry owners in your communities. Before we dive into today's content, we'd like to acknowledge the support that made this educational series possible. The material is based upon work supported by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture as part of the USDA through the North Central Region Sustainable Agricultural Research and Educational Initiative, or SARE. The program is under the project ENC 23-223. The full funding acknowledgement and required USDA statement are provided on this slide for your reference. We are grateful for their support in helping us develop educational resources for veterinary and extension professionals serving small flock poultry owners. I'd also like to briefly review a few important disclaimers. Lincoln University is an equal opportunity employer and provider and does not discriminate in its educational programs, activities, services, admissions, or employment practices based on the protected characteristics listed on the slide. You may also notice references to specific products, equipment, or brand names throughout the presentation. These examples are included solely for educational purposes and should not be interpreted as endorsements by Lincoln University or our project partners. Finally, although today's presentation is based on current research and accepted best practices, the information is intended for educational purposes. It is not a substitute for veterinary medical advice or the diagnosis and treatment of individual animals. Specific flock health concerns should always be addressed through an established veterinarian client-patient relationship. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Tatiana Fisher, and I am an assistant professor and the State Poultry Extension Specialist at Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri. I've served in this role since March of 2020, and I've been working with poultry producers across the state with a particular emphasis on small and backyard flocks. My educational background includes bachelor's degrees in animal science and agricultural biotechnology, as well as a PhD in animal science from the University of Kentucky. My extension and research programs focus on small flock poultry production, including both meat and egg production, exhibition poultry, biosecurity, heritage breed chickens, and the evaluation of alternative feed ingredients on small farms. One of the things I enjoy most about this work is connecting with flock owners and the professionals who support them. Small flock producers represent a wide range of backgrounds, experience levels, and production goals, which makes this area of poultry production both rewarding and uniquely challenging. Throughout today's webinar, I'll share insights from our extension programs and discuss ways veterinary and extension professionals can effectively serve this growing audience. Now that we've covered our introductions and housekeeping items, let's begin with today's topic, understanding the small flock poultry landscape. When people hear the term small flock, they often picture a few hens in someone's backyard. While these flocks are certainly part of the picture, the reality is much more diverse. Small flock poultry production includes a wide variety of production systems, owner backgrounds, and management goals. As veterinary and extension professionals, understanding that diversity is the first step toward providing effective education, recommendations, and support. The better we understand who those flock owners are and what motivates them, the better equipped we are to address their questions, recognize potential risks, and help them succeed. To frame today's discussion, let's start by looking at our learning objectives. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to describe the diversity of poultry systems that make up the small flock sector and explain why flock size alone doesn't tell the whole story when it comes to management. We'll also look at the people behind these flocks, their motivations, their characteristics that make this audience so diverse, and some of the common challenges they face. Finally, we'll explore how small flock poultry connects to animal health, food safety, public health, and disease surveillance, and why that makes the role of veterinary and extension professionals so important. I also want to set expectations for today's webinar. We're not trying to make everyone a poultry production specialist in one session. Instead, our goal is to develop a shared understanding of the small flock poultry sector and the people we serve. That foundation will support the rest of the webinar series and help you feel more confident working with this audience. So before we define what a small flock is, let's first talk about why this sector deserves our attention. So why are we dedicating an entire webinar, and really an entire series, to small flock poultry? The simple answer is that this sector has grown dramatically and continues to expand. Veterinary clinics, extension offices, diagnostic laboratories, and regulatory agencies are all seeing more questions from backyard and small-scale poultry owners than ever before. These flocks may be small individually, but collectively they represent a significant and growing population of birds. They also create a unique opportunity and challenge because most owners don't come from traditional agricultural backgrounds, and they often have very different goals from commercial producers. From a professional perspective, small flocks are important because they intersect with animal health, food safety, public health, disease surveillance, and community education. Whether someone works in clinical practice, extension, or regulatory medicine, chances are they'll interact with small flock owners at some point. That naturally leads to another question. Why has interest in keeping poultry increased so dramatically? There's no single reason people are raising poultry today. Instead, several trends have contributed to the rapid growth of the small flock sector. Many people are interested in producing food locally or becoming more self-sufficient by raising their own eggs or meat. Others are motivated by sustainability or concerns about food security, especially following disruptions to food supply chains in recent years. Small flocks are also popular in educational settings, including 4-H, FFA, schools, and youth programs, where they provide valuable hands-on learning experiences. At the same time, hobby farming and homesteading have become increasingly popular. Many people enjoy keeping heritage breeds or exhibiting poultry. Finally, many owners simply enjoy poultry as companion animals. It's becoming increasingly common for chickens and other poultry to be viewed much like other household pets, with owners investing significant time and resources into their care. Those motivations shape nearly every management decision an owner makes, from housing and nutrition to healthcare, biosecurity, and whether they seek veterinary care at all. That's why there isn't really a typical small flock. We've established that small flock ownership is growing and that this audience is incredibly diverse. But before we can talk about management or owner needs, we first need to define the sector itself. So in this next section, we'll look at what we mean by small flock poultry and why there's no definition that fits every situation. So what do we actually mean by the term small flock poultry? At first, it seems like it should have a simple answer. But if you ask 5 different organizations, you're likely to get 5 different definitions. Some define a small flock by the number of birds, while others base it on regulatory classifications, production systems, or ownership structure. That variation exists because different organizations are trying to answer different questions. A regulatory agency may define a small flock differently than a research program or an extension publication. For our purposes, though, it's important not to get caught up in finding one specific numerical cutoff. Instead, we want to think more broadly about how the flock is managed and what the owner's goals are. That's the perspective we'll use throughout this webinar series. As you'll see, understanding the management system often tells us much more than simply knowing how many birds are in the flock. For this webinar series, we're focusing on owner-managed poultry systems that operate outside of highly integrated commercial poultry production. This includes a remarkably diverse group of flocks. Some owners keep a handful of hens as a hobby or for fresh eggs. Others raise exhibition birds, maintain heritage breeds, or produce meat and eggs as part of a small farm enterprise. You'll notice that the size range on this slide spans from a single bird to over 1,000 birds. That may seem like a wide range, but the common thread isn't necessarily flock size. It's that these operations are independently managed rather than part of a vertically integrated commercial production system. As we move through today's webinar, I'd encourage you to think less about flock size and more about how the flock is managed. That perspective will be much more useful as we discuss health, husbandry, and owner needs throughout the rest of the series. So, just how common are small flocks? That's actually a difficult question to answer because, unlike commercial poultry operations, there isn't a registry of backyard or small flock owners. Even so, the available data that show small flock ownership is widespread. USDA has estimated that 7% of US households own a small poultry flock, with an average flock size of around 49 birds. More recently, the American Pet Products Association estimated that approximately 11 million households kept backyard chickens in 2025, which is nearly double the number reported in 2018. Whether you look at USDA estimates or other surveys, the message is the same. Small flock ownership is no longer a niche activity. It represents millions of birds and millions of owners across the country. That means even professionals who don't consider themselves poultry specialists are increasingly likely to receive questions about poultry health, husbandry, nutrition, regulations, or biosecurity. So what does a small flock look like? The short answer is it depends. A flock might consist of just a few laying hens in a suburban backyard or several hundred birds on a rural farm. Housing can range from portable chicken tractors to permanent coops, and management practices vary just as widely. Rather than looking for one typical small flock, it's more useful to recognize that diversity is one of the defining characteristics of this sector. That diversity becomes even clearer when we compare a few flocks that might be the same size. To see why flock size doesn't tell the story, let's look at 3 examples. Each of these owners has 25 birds, but their management decisions are completely different. The first keeps laying hens for fresh eggs, perhaps for family use or a local farmer's market. Their priorities might include egg production, nutrition, and predator protection. The second raises meat birds, so they're focused on growth rate, feed efficiency, their processing schedule, and maybe flock turnover. The third maintains a breeding flock, where their priorities might shift to genetics, fertility, hatchability, and preserving breed characteristics. Even though each flock contains the same number of birds, the management goals and the questions these owners are likely to ask are very different. That's why flock size alone rarely tells us what support an owner will need. Now, when people hear the word poultry, they're often thinking of only chickens. While chickens are certainly the most common species, small flock owners keep a wide variety of poultry, including ducks, turkeys, geese, guinea fowl, quail, peafowl, even ratites. Mixed species flocks are also common, particularly in backyard and home settings. The diversity matters because each species has its own nutritional needs, housing requirements, behaviors, and disease considerations. Many of these principles we'll discuss throughout the series will apply across poultry species, but effective management often requires species-specific knowledge. One of the most important concepts to understand is that small flock systems are not simply smaller versions of commercial poultry production. The differences extend well beyond the number of birds. Small flocks often operate under different management conditions, and those differences can have a significant impact on bird health and disease risk. For example, small flocks typically have greater genetic diversity. Instead of a single commercial strain selected for one production goal, owners may keep multiple breeds, heritage varieties, or birds selected for other factors like appearance or temperament, or even just personal preference. Mixed species flocks are also common. A single property may include chickens, ducks, geese, turkeys, or other poultry sharing the same environment. While that diversity can be rewarding, it also creates unique management and disease considerations. Age structure is another important difference. Commercial operations generally manage birds in uniform age groups, while small flock owners may have chicks, juveniles, adults, and older birds together, creating different nutritional needs and disease risks. Introducing new birds is also a common practice. Birds may be purchased, traded, swapped, ordered from hatcheries, or just acquired from other flocks. Without proper quarantine, each new addition creates an opportunity to introduce disease. Record keeping also varies widely. Some owners maintain detailed records on health, production, and individual birds, while others keep little or no documentation, making health investigations more challenging. Finally, veterinary involvement differs considerably. Some owners have an established relationship with a poultry veterinarian, not very many, while others may have limited access to poultry expertise or may not seek veterinary care until a significant problem develops. Taken together, these differences reinforce an important part of the whole system. Small flocks require recommendations that reflect the owner's goals, management practices, and available resources. They're not simply scaled down versions of commercial management. Another important aspect of the small flock sector is that regulations are often system dependent. Unlike commercial poultry production, where operations typically fit into more standardized categories, small flock operations vary tremendously. As a result, the agencies involved and the requirements that apply can differ from one flock to another. Depending on the situation, owners may interact with federal, state, or local agencies. Applicable requirements are influenced by factors such as where birds are located, whether products are sold, their processing practices, movement of birds, participation in exhibitions, and waste management. For example, a family keeping a few hens for home production may face very different set of requirements than someone raising meat birds for direct sales or transporting exhibition birds across state lines. The important takeaway is that small flock isn't a regulatory category. Before offering guidance, it's essential to understand the owner's goals, management practices, and how the flock operates. Now, we've talked about what small flock poultry is and why these systems can't be defined by flock size alone, but understanding the system is only one part of the equation. Behind every flock is an owner making decisions based on their goals, experiences, knowledge, resources, and relationship with their birds. So in this next section, we'll shift our focus from the birds to the people. Understanding small flock owners is one of the most important steps in providing recommendations that are both practical and meaningful. So, who exactly keeps poultry? One of the biggest misconceptions about small flocks is that there's a typical owner. In reality, this is an incredibly diverse audience. Small flock owners live in urban neighborhoods, suburban communities, and rural areas. Some keep a few hens for fresh eggs, while others maintain larger flocks as part of homesteads or small agricultural enterprises. Others are hobbyists, breeders, or exhibition enthusiasts who are interested in genetics, heritage breeds, or showing poultry. Youth programs and schools also play an important role, using poultry to teach responsibility, agricultural, and animal care. Experience levels vary just as much. Some owners have raised poultry for decades, while others bought their first chicks only a few months ago. Keeping that diversity in mind is important because it shapes the questions owners ask, the challenges they encounter, and the type of support they need. Understanding why somebody keeps poultry is one of the first steps towards providing useful guidance. Some owners are motivated by food production. They want fresh eggs, home-raised meat, or greater control over where their food comes from. Others are interested in self-sufficiency, sustainability, or homesteading. For some, poultry is primarily a hobby centered around breeding, preserving heritage breeds, or exhibiting birds. Poultry also plays an important role in youth and educational settings, where they might be a way for people to teach responsibility. And increasingly, poultry are kept just because people enjoy them. Many owners know each bird individually and view them as companions rather than just livestock. Those motivations influence nearly every management decision an owner makes. Which brings us to another important concept, the human-animal bond. Many small flock owners develop close relationships with their birds. They know them individually, they give them names, and they often think of them as companions rather than strictly production animals. That relationship can influence everything from data management to healthcare decisions and end-of-life care. For example, one owner may want to pursue treatment for an individual bird, while another may make decisions based primarily on the bird's role within the flock or the purpose of the operation. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. Our goal is to understand the owner's goals and values so that we can provide recommendations that fit their situation. Recognizing the human-animal bond helps us communicate more effectively and build recommendations the owners are both willing and able to implement. Another important consideration is where owners get their information. Most small flock owners are highly motivated to learn and genuinely want to make good management decisions. The challenge is that they're often drawing information from many different sources, and not all those sources provide accurate or applicable guidance. Common sources include books, internet searches, social media communities, friends, neighbors, extension professionals, veterinarians, feed stores, breeders, and poultry clubs. For us, understanding where an owner gets their information is just as important as understanding what they know. Rather than making assumptions, we can start by asking questions about their experience, their goals, and the resources they've been using. That approach creates opportunities to build trust while helping owners evaluate information more critically. Once we recognize how diverse small flock owners are, it becomes clear that there's no single recommendation that's right for every flock. Effective recommendations begin with understanding the owner's objectives. Before suggesting management changes, consider what's the purpose of this flock? What outcomes matter the most? What resources are available, including time, facilities, finances, and then what challenges is the owner experiencing? The same health concern may require very different recommendations depending on whether we're working with a family flock, an exhibition breeder, a small egg enterprise, or a youth project. Understanding the owner is often the first step towards providing advice that's both practical and effective. So far, we've explored who small flock owners are, what motivates them, and why these systems require a different approach than commercial poultry production. Now, let's look at what that means in practice. Small flock ownership comes with unique challenges, but it also creates important opportunities for veterinarians and extension professionals to make a real difference. In the next section, we'll discuss some of the common challenges owners face, where professional guidance can have the greatest impact, and why supporting small flocks matters well beyond the individual owner. While small flock owners are often highly motivated and deeply invested in their birds, there are several areas where professional guidance can make a meaningful difference. One challenge is access to poultry-specific expertise. Not every community has a poultry veterinarian, an extension specialist, or other professionals with poultry experience. Another challenge is finding reliable, research-based information. Owners have access to an incredible amount of information online, but determining what is accurate and what applies to their particular flock can be difficult. Even with good information, translating into recommendations into day-to-day management isn't always straightforward. Advice needs to fit the flock and the owner's goals and the resources they have available. Biosecurity and disease prevention are another area where veterinary and extension professionals can have a real impact. Rather than applying a one-size-fits-all approach, we can help owners identify practical strategies that reduce risk within their own operation. Owners may also need help accessing diagnostics, medications, supplies, or simply knowing when a problem requires additional expertise. These aren't signs of a lack of commitment. Instead, they represent opportunities for us to provide trusted guidance, practical resources, and ongoing support. Small flock owners seek guidance on a wide range of topics, and those questions often reflect the complexity of poultry management, rather than a lack of effort or interest. Some questions focus on the basics, understanding poultry biology and behavior, designing appropriate housing, supporting bird welfare, and making nutritional decisions. Others relate to flock health, including biosecurity, recognizing early signs of disease, and knowing how to respond when something doesn't seem right. Owners also have questions about food safety, public health, reportable diseases, regulations, and available resources. Recognizing these common themes helps us anticipate where questions are likely to arise and where veterinary and extension professionals can provide the greatest value. Perhaps most importantly, effective support isn't about having every answer immediately. It's about asking the right questions, identifying reliable information, and helping owners make informed decisions. Those needs create valuable opportunities for veterinary and extension professionals. One of the most important things we can do is provide research-based education and help owners translate information into practical management decisions. That might include guidance on nutrition, housing, preventative health, biosecurity, or disease prevention. We can also help owners navigate the overwhelming amount of information available by connecting them with reliable, science-based resources. Just as importantly, we can build relationships. Owners are far more likely to ask questions, seek help early, and adopt new practices when they have a trusted professional they can turn to. Ultimately, our goal isn't simply to answer questions, it's to help owners make informed decisions that fit their flock and their circumstances. Biosecurity is one area where that guidance can have a particularly meaningful impact. Many characteristics of small flocks can influence disease risk. New birds may enter a flock through purchases, trades, hatchery orders, or exhibitions, and without appropriate quarantine or management, these introductions can bring new pathogens with them. Many small flocks also include multiple species or birds of different ages, creating additional management considerations. Movement of birds, visitors, equipment, and even contact with wildlife can all create opportunities for disease spread. Our goal isn't to expect small flock owners to manage their birds exactly like commercial operations. Instead, it's to help them understand where risks exist and identify practical biosecurity measures that fit their flock. Although we've focused primarily on individual flocks, it's important to remember that small flock poultry is connected to a much larger system. Small flocks fit naturally within a One Health framework because animal health, human health, and environmental health are closely interconnected. From an animal health perspective, we're concerned with disease prevention, bird welfare, and access to appropriate veterinary care. From a human health perspective, small flocks influence food safety, zoonotic disease awareness, and disease surveillance. They also contribute to our communities through youth programs, local food production, hobby agriculture, environmental stewardship, and interactions with wildlife. Recognizing these connections reminds us that supporting a single flock can have benefits that extend well beyond one backyard or one farm. As we think about the role of veterinary and extension professionals, it's important to remember the larger purpose behind this work. Good management is the foundation of healthy birds, healthy people, and healthy communities. At the flock level, good management means providing appropriate nutrition, housing, welfare, and preventative care, while recognizing and addressing health concerns. For people, good management supports food safety, responsible ownership, and awareness of potential risks associated with poultry. And at the community level, well-managed flocks contribute to education, disease awareness, and stronger connections between poultry owners and professionals who support them. This is why supporting small flock owners is important. We're not simply helping someone care for a few birds. We are contributing to healthier animal systems, safer food practices, and better informed communities. And that's exactly what this webinar is designed to support. So what does effective support for small owners actually look like? I think it comes down to three things: knowing the flock, knowing the owner, knowing the risks, and also understanding the situation. Knowing the flock means understanding the species, management, and health concerns. Knowing the owner means understanding the goals, experiences, resources, and expectations. And knowing the risks means recognizing disease pathways, biosecurity considerations, and other factors that influence flock health. When we understand all three, we're in a much better position to provide guidance that's practical, realistic, and tailored to the situation. Ultimately, that's how we build healthier flocks and more confident owners and stronger communities. As we wrap up this first webinar, I'd like to return to the purpose of the series. The goal isn't to make everyone a poultry production specialist in a single session or a single series. Small flock poultry is a broad and complex topic, and building expertise takes time. Instead, our goal is to build your confidence and your capacity to support small flock owners. Throughout the series, we'll explore flock management, health, biosecurity, and other topics that will help you work more effectively with this audience. We'll also introduce practical tools and communication strategies and decision-making frameworks that you can use when working with owners in your communities. Perhaps most importantly, we'll continue building connections between veterinarians, extension professionals, diagnostic laboratories, poultry specialists, and other trusted resources. You won't always need to have every answer. Often the greatest value you can provide is asking the right questions, recognizing when additional expertise is needed, and connecting owners with reliable sources of information. Together, we can help create healthier flocks and better informed owners and stronger communities. As we close today's webinar, I want to share a few resources that can help to continue building your knowledge and supporting small flock owners. One of the challenges we discussed earlier is that owners and professionals are often navigating a large amount of information. Having trusted research-based resources is an important part of providing good support. The resources on this slide represent organizations and programs that provide science-based information on poultry management, health, biosecurity, and food safety. I encourage you to become familiar with the resources available in your own state and region, including extension programs, university poultry specialists, diagnostic laboratories, and animal health agencies. You do not have to create all of these resources yourself. A key part of supporting small flock owners is knowing where to find information and where to direct people when they have questions outside your area of expertise. With that, we'll wrap up today's discussion on understanding the small flock poultry landscape. Thank you for joining us for this first webinar. Before we move into questions, I'd like to invite you to stay connected with the Lincoln University Cooperative Extension Poultry Program. Small flock poultry is a community effort, and building connections between owners, extension professionals, veterinarians, and other partners is an important part of supporting this audience. The information on this slide includes my contact information, as well as ways to connect with our program through social media channels. We encourage you to reach out with the questions, share resources, and let us know what topics would be most helpful as we continue developing programming for small flock poultry audience and those that support them. We hope the series becomes a resource you can return to as you continue working with small flock owners. Before we move into questions, I want to highlight the next webinar in the Small Flock Poultry Fundamentals for Veterinarian and Extension Professional series. Our next session will focus on poultry biology for non-specialists and will be led by my colleague, Dr. Victoria Uyanga. This webinar will build on today's discussion by providing a stronger foundation in poultry biology and helping participants better understand how poultry anatomy, physiology, and biology influence management and health. We hope you will join us as we continue building the knowledge and tools necessary to better support small flock poultry owners. With that, we've reached the end of today's formal presentation. Thank you again for spending your time with us and for the work you do to support poultry owners and your communities. We hope today's webinar has given you a useful framework for understanding the small flock poultry landscape and the important role veterinary and extension professionals play in supporting this growing audience. If you need to hop off at this point, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next session in the series. For those who are able to stay, we'll stick around for questions and discussion. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation.